Most of us struggle with letting the voices outside of ourselves have the highest volume in the room. It's as if everyone around us is on loudspeaker and our own soul is only a whisper to us, and we're really struggling to make sense of what it's trying to say. Welcome to the Love Your Brain podcast, the podcast designed for everyday people who are ready to hop off the negative thought hamster wheel and enjoy a less hostile environment in their own brains. Our brains are where we live our entire lives, and I'm on a mission to help people see that they have everything they need to make it a happier place to be. So join us for this episode of the Love Your Brain podcast. Let's get started. Okay, guys, today is the day we get to talk about something I truly love, and that is learning to make decisions from our intuition. The reason why I love this topic so much is because, to me, it's a bit of the magical part of each one of us. In many ways, it's that being led by our intuition that creates like this beautifully unique life for each of us. And there is so much that we can cover on this topic, but today I'm just going to break down what it even is, what it might look like for you, and how to tap into it. Now, some people believe that intuition is the ability to sense like small energetic patterns or vibrations, both inside of ourselves and outside of ourselves in our surroundings, that guides our decisions and our actions. Some people see it more like a spiritual thing, and they associate it with being led by their creator, their God, their universe, their source. There's many names for it. And other people just see it as like an innate instinct almost that we all have and that we're born with. But regardless of how you define it or how you view it, intuition is something that we all have. When it comes down to it, how we define it is a lot less important than how we focus on it. That's the important part, is staying connected to that intuition and paying attention to how you interact with it and how it helps you move through life. Because you innately have something guiding you, and that is the important part, that you're letting that magical GPS system that you have inside of you lead you and help you to know what steps to take to get where you need to be on your specific path. And when you follow it, life unfolds in really cool ways where you can have peace about your decisions and less regret because you know you're moving through life in a way aligned with something bigger than just that decision on paper. So, what does it look like to follow your intuition? Well, in practice, it's shifting from decision making from a place of just weighing options and deciding rationally what the best route is, and instead slowing down, quieting ourselves enough to hear that small little nudge inside of us to guide that decision. And it's kind of hard to describe because it's not something people really feel like they can explain. In fact, it's often described as being unexplainable, right? When you hear crazy stories about how people followed their gut and avoided some catastrophe. They'll say they just had a feeling and they followed it. Some even call it a sixth sense. And as hard as it is to describe, there are some things I can tell you about how it works typically. So, one thing I want to start by explaining is the experience that people have in their bodies when it comes to intuition. And again, this can vary greatly. A lot of people will explain that when they make a decision from their intuition, that they have a deep peace about it, or they'll say that they had clarity. That's another word you'll often hear. Following your intuition does not typically feel chaotic or disorganized, but instead it usually feels clear and calm. And the reason for that is because it's tied to who you are at your core, your soul, your calling. And when you're making decisions from that place, it's clear and it's confident. Think about driving on a path. Let's call it your path of life, but it's like a road. You're driving down it, it's going smooth, everything's going great when you're on your path, right? You can drive it with ease. You may hit a bump here or there, but nothing you can't manage. But when your car starts to swerve a little bit off the path and off to a different path, you may hit those rumble strips on the highway and they shake you around like crazy. It feels weird, it feels disorganized, it feels like you can't get your footing. It's definitely not peaceful. But then when you steer back onto your path, you feel that peace again. You can take a breath, it's smooth, it's manageable. Now, I don't want to paint this picture like following your intuition is all smooth and easy. But it is a picture to kind of help you see how following your path is going to feel at a basic level more manageable. Even the bumps you'll experience on the right path for you will feel less jarring than when you're following a path that's not for you. Those bumps will feel crazy all over the place. The idea here is our gut our intuition is always communicating with us on how to move forward, but we aren't always in tune enough to hear it. The truth is, whether you are listening to your intuition on a daily decision making basis or not, you've all experienced it at some point in your life. Even if you're someone who's not spent much time consciously paying attention to your intuition, I would bet you can still remember a time when you had a quote unquote feeling, right? That feeling where you just knew something was right, or you just knew something was wrong. There was no question in your mind. And as I've been sharing some examples in these past few weeks from my own experience, I hope they've inspired you to remember some of your own stories of when you followed your gut. The reason I wanted you to think about your own situation is because I found this is such a personal experience, down to how it feels uniquely in your own physical body to follow your intuition. Now, some people explain when they have peace about a decision, when they're following their gut, that they actually feel like they have a lightness, or their muscles in their body feel relaxed. Or maybe it's a weird tingle in your ear. Or maybe you have an actual sensation in your gut, in your stomach. And the same goes with the opposite, right? We have very diverse sensations when we feel something is not right. They can be all over the place. For some people, when something's not right, they feel it in their throat, like their throat's closing, or they can feel a heaviness in their chest. It's all over the place in terms of what it can feel like. So please know that although I'm sharing some common themes with intuition, your experience is unique to you. And truthfully, you know yourself best. As diverse as the feelings of our intuition can be, it's also usually subtle. It can be as subtle as the differences between the emotions of fear and excitement. Those two emotions have very similar physiological symptoms in our bodies. But there is a subtle difference, and that difference can mean a whole lot. One is something you typically enjoy, and one is something you typically don't, right? Fear and excitement. They can feel somewhat similar, but also those are very different emotions. Which leads me to my next point. A big part of tapping into our intuition is slowing down enough to even pay attention to how our bodies are talking to us. And if this practice of tapping into your intuition is somewhat new for you, it might take some time to recognize how your body is talking to you. But it's a learning experience, so play around with it, test it out. Like, okay, when I feel such and such in my body, I think that's my body telling me that this is the right thing. So next time I have that feeling, maybe I'll try and pick that option and see how I feel. And sometimes it will be easy and you will just immediately know the right decision for you. But sometimes it will take slowing down and tapping into yourself in order to see clearly. Part of the reason it's hard to hear when our intuition is leading us is because we have a lot of competing things happening in our brains. First, we've all got trauma of some sort or another. It's just a part of life. And this trauma can often create almost knee jerk reactions in us that feel almost like our intuition. When we're faced with a decision, we may feel immediately like we know what to do, and you may think it's your gut talking to you, but in reality, it's a trauma response. It's an emotional response. It's not really coming from your intuition. Unfortunately, you're probably just being triggered in that situation, and that's what's leading you down that path. And another competing thing happening in our brains is the voices of the outside world, otherwise known as people pleasing, which I know we have touched on in this decision making series a bit. But people pleasing is actually born out of our innate instinct to stay alive. Way back in the day when we lived in groups and we all depended on each other for survival, if we made a decision that went against the group, it could mean death. But today, thankfully, we've evolved. We all provide for our own needs for the most part, and we don't need to default to that thought pattern anymore that in order to survive, we must conform. We no longer need to be afraid that if we don't act how our neighbor wants us to act, that they won't share what they hunt and we won't be able to eat, right? For the most part, we can meet our own innate needs individually. But when people pleasing tries to kick in, we can feel a bit deceived because sometimes what feels like peace about a decision is actually coming from thinking that someone else will be happy with our decision and that there won't be drama around it. But newsflash, unfortunately, that's just not how it works. We are, in fact, not able to control how others perceive us or act towards us, even if we think we're making a decision that will make them happy. So it can feel like peace sometimes because we're trying to anticipate the peace in someone else. Meanwhile, we're hurting ourselves. So it takes really sitting and listening to that feeling to figure out if that's from you or if you're feeling it because of what you anticipate from someone else. And with both of those emotional responses, they're happening in our brains, our trauma, the voices of those around us, all competing for our attention. It can be really hard to hear the intuition talking to us. So here's one tool I like to use because it pulls some of those outside voices out of the equation and can draw you back to your soul's pull. So what I do is I ask this specific question. If either option were the right option, which would I pick? It neutralizes the options so you can approach it more from a perspective of what do I feel pulled to do. Another powerful question you could use is if things were guaranteed to work out fine with either path, which would I choose? Because hint, hint, nudge, nudge, things do work out okay either way. But the key here is that you're tapping into the most authentic decision for you. We're peeling away how others will perceive it. We're peeling away what we think others expect of us. And sometimes it even helps to peel away that trauma response a little bit. It's much less important that we're making the most rationally right decision in life. It's much more important that we're making a decision that aligns with us for our journey. Life is not one long multiple choice test, okay? It's not like we've got this in front of us where, number one, option A is the best option, number two, option C is the right option. That's just not how it works. Your life and the decisions you make are meant to create a unique drawing, unfolding with you written all over it, so that when you're done, you look back and those decisions all look like they belong to you. Because the truth is, each time we trust that intuition, that gut instinct, we're building a stronger relationship with ourselves. We're building trust with ourselves, and as corny as it sounds, your relationship with yourself is the most important one you will ever invest in. And learning to listen to your intuition is like when you're in a friendship or a romantic relationship with another person. You set up time to spend together, to listen to them, to learn about them, to all their little nuances. When you spend time with yourself in that way, listening to your soul speak to you and paying attention to when your body is speaking to you, you are building trust with yourself that you are listening, that what your soul is speaking to you is important and it's valuable information that will be used. Because a lot of us have grown up and lived our lives making decisions simply to benefit others, to please others, to serve others, to not rock the boat, or even to just keep our own pain at bay, muting our trauma, instead of listening to the pain and what it's trying to tell you. It has gotten us into really bad habits with making decisions that don't align with who we are. Most of us struggle with letting the voices outside of ourselves have the highest volume in the room. It's as if everyone around us is on loudspeaker and our own soul is only a whisper to us, and we're really struggling to make sense of what it's trying to say. I think back to that story I shared earlier in the series when I decided to go study abroad in Spain, a decision I made from my gut, from my intuition, because logically it did not make sense on paper. One thing I failed to mention in that episode was that pretty much everyone I went on that trip with was all getting their degree in Spanish, or Spanish was going to be a huge part of their career. But that wasn't me. I was going to be a social worker. Now, would Spanish be helpful? Of course. But it was definitely not the focus of my studies, so it honestly didn't make sense to a lot of the teachers why I was even going. But I knew I needed to go, and once I was there, I did hit bumps, so many bumps, from getting stuck in other countries to having family tragedy strike while I was there, to just so many things. But I had so much peace with each one because I knew I was supposed to be there, and it made maneuvering those bumps so much easier. And every one of us has had that experience at one point or another in our life, where we make a decision that we know at our core is the right path, even if it doesn't make sense rationally or logically. But we chose it and we have peace, even when it doesn't go as we expect. But funny enough, one thing that is often fairly absent when following our gut is the feeling of regret, a topic we covered in depth last week, and I promised you a hack to avoid it, and here it is. Following your intuition can prevent a whole lot of regret. Regret does not often have a strong pull when we're following our intuition because our soul knows we're right where we need to be. So, to recap, here are a few key things to remember when you're strengthening your intuition muscle when making decisions. First is Remember. Remember back to when you had a lot of peace about a decision you made, when you felt like you were following your gut. What did it feel like in your body? What sensations did you feel? What thoughts were going through your mind? Let your body remind you of what it's like to follow your intuition. Next is to slow down and listen, not just to what's happening at the surface, but deep down. What are you feeling as you go about making that decision? And slowing down can look a lot of ways. Maybe it's going for a walk outside, or doing some deep breathing or meditation. Or maybe you're going to try just some journaling to get some of that noise going on in your head out on paper. Next is to try and peel away some of the distractions around us, right? Or even inside of us. Peel away some of that trauma or the emotional response or what the outside voices are trying to tell you. Try to get to your own essence, your soul pull, and what it's saying to you. Really sit down and think about what is important to you, what feels in line with who you are and who you want to be. Then test it out. Try listening and figuring out what your intuition is telling you. Proceed how you think it's directing you and see how it goes. Start small though, as goofy as it sounds. One way to try this is even just picking what to eat. So, maybe you're trying to decide what you're going to have for lunch. Slow down, listen to what your intuition is telling you, look for those cues, and proceed in a way you think it's directing you. If you feel like trash after or have a bunch of regret, maybe tweak it next time. Go back to the drawing board. You'll definitely learn something along the way. And then when you try again, you'll just have more information to go off of. I also love experimenting with this when it comes to picking a coffee shop to work in. It's something that I like to do on the weekends, especially when I'm preparing for the podcast. I'll try and sit down and go over some of my options for coffee shops I can go to and really get in tune with my intuition. I try to not let logic tell me which one's closer, which one's cheaper, any of that. And I can tell you, it usually turns out really cool. I remember one Saturday I did that exercise with my intuition, and the one I felt pulled to did not really make a whole lot of sense. But when I followed it and I got there, it ended up being the grand opening for new owners that had taken over that coffee shop. And oh my gosh, it was such a cool experience. It was really neat to hear their story of why they opened there and that transition and their vision. It was just such a cool experience to be a part of. And I'm so glad I followed my gut on that one. Another thing to pay attention to is the speed at which you're making decisions. And I want to throw this in here because I think we all fall into habits when it comes to this, and we can work on those. So, some of us try and rush to get through the discomfort of making a decision and lose connection with those little small nudges because we just want to get it over with. And others of us maybe sit a little too long and allow too much noise the longer we sit with it. So, which side do you lean on? Try just doing the opposite of what your tendency is and see how it feels for you. And not just that initial feeling, but how you feel with the end result. How do you feel with how things ended up? I know for me, I tend to be one that wants to quickly get a decision over with. So I rush through it and I can tend to lose touch with those tiny nudges from my intuition. So I know for me, when I feel the urge to rush, I have to intentionally tell myself, okay, maybe we need to wait until tomorrow to respond. And if you're one of those people who's actually a decision procrastinator, maybe you need to practice listening to that first gut instinct on how you act and not just question it and sit there and stew on it so much. Your intuition is like a muscle. So if we keep practicing and refining it, it will get easier to use over time. There is no formula. Your intuition may look very different than most, so let it guide you to your own magical, unique path. I'm sure in future episodes we'll continue to dive more into intuition, but for now, hopefully, you have some things you can try. This episode was planned to be the last in this decision making series, but I am following my intuition on this one, and I'm going to share a bonus episode next week. And this episode is going to be focused on how to support those you care about when they're struggling to make decisions or just life struggles in general. I think it's going to be really powerful and will give you some ways to help you feel more empowered when you see someone else struggling and aren't sure how to help. Because I don't know about you, but for me, when someone I care about is struggling, it can sometimes consume my own brain trying to figure out what the right thing is to do to help them. So join me next week for that one. Have a great week, guys. I hope you found something helpful here today on the Love Your Brain podcast. Maybe a laugh or a feeling of validation, or maybe just a few moments to have company while you do your laundry. Whatever you take from it, I hope you enjoyed your time and leave feeling empowered to be more you every day. Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss out on the next episode, and leave a review. I'd love to hear what you think. Have a great one.